Hi everyone, my name's Electric Donkey, and today we're back on the No Man's Sky type project we've got going. So first off, I apologise if I'm a bit quieter today. It's just because I've adjusted my mic settings. You just turned me up a little bit on the volume, and overall the audio quality should now be better as well. Comment down below if it isn't. But for the time being, what we're going to want to be doing is our No Man's Sky. So in the last video, if you remember, we destroyed blocks. We made a little system to destroy the blocks. However, once we destroyed them, they just disappeared into nowhere. And realistically, that's not something we want to happen. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go ahead and add in some sort of inventory. Now, the inventory that we're going to be using in this tutorial is the same as the one that I've used in my own personal sandbox sort of game project. And it's not the most advanced inventory in the world, but it gets the job done, so that's why I like it. And it's simple to use and understand. So the first thing we're going to want to do is go ahead and make a new object. It's going to be called Object Inventory, and just like that. It's going to have no sprite either, and basically it's going to consist of a create event and then a draw event. It's going to be the main two. Well, that's going to be draw UI actually, GUI. So they're going to be the main two, and let me just get up my inventory on here. So you can see here, in my actual game I have loads of extra ones, and we might use a step, but for the time being I think it will just revolve around the create, the draw GUI, and actually the game end. That's quite important. So let's go ahead and make a game end one as well, and all these are basically just little addings of items and different checks that I've added in. So let's start with the create event. So the first thing we're going to want to do, and we'll leave out the a few bits at the time being, but the main thing we're going to want to add in here is we're going to want to create this grid. So create the inventory grid. Now this is what we're going to store all of our variables in for our slots, basically. So we're going to use a global for this, so it's going to be global.inv to stand for inventory obviously, and we're just going to use ds-grid create as normal. I've turned off auto checking at some point, so we'll just untick that, and it's going to be 230. I mean, that's probably a bit excessive. The 2's got to be there because that's how many down we're going to be using, but the 30, that just depends on how many slots you want to have. For me it was 30. Obviously it's not going to be going up to 30, but that was just way over the top to make sure it didn't come up with an error. So now we're going to clear that grid that we just made, just to make sure everything's set to what we want it to be. So it's global.inv, and we're going to clear it all to 0, just like that. Now that's all we're going to do for the time being. We'll go back to what the key and C mean in a minute. They weren't great names for them, but for the time being we're going to just go ahead and in the game end we're just going to destroy the grids, because general practice is to destroy as soon as you've created a grid in the create event, then you're going to want to destroy it straight after, so you don't forget. I've just been getting sent messages on the Discord chat. So what we're going to want to do is just ds-grid destroy here. So grid destroy, and it's just going to be global.inv, just like that, and that's simply going to stop us from getting any errors, not errors as such, leaks. So they may result in massive frame drops, etc, etc, and yeah, so they're not really advised in your game. So now we're going to go on to the draw GUI. Now of course this is going to be the biggest bit, but even so it's only 17 lines long, and we're also probably going to leave out this and or adapt that slightly. So for the time being, let's just make a create event, sorry, I meant a draw GUI event. So let's full screen that on that side. Now what this is going to do is it's going to draw the inventory, of course, And first off, we're going to want to do an if statement. So this is going to simply check whether we are in the desired state. Now, to do this, this is going to be tricky because we're going to want to set a variable. So let's do that now. So in the create, let's call it paused equals false. So defaultly we're not paused, even paused. Defaultly we're not paused, but then we're going to make a step event like so, and then in the step event we're going to toggle the paused state. Actually, do we want? No, we don't want a step event, sorry. We want that to be a key press, and it's going to be I for inventory, obviously. So, whoops, that was a H, I think, or maybe nothing. So we want to go letters and I like that. So now we're going to toggle the paused state. Now, basically every time we will press I, we want to change what state we are in. So whether that's inventory open or inventory closed. So if paused equals false, then we're going to set paused equal true. Otherwise, if it equals true and if it's already open, then we're going to swap it around and we're going to set it back to false. Simple toggle. Now in the Draw GUI we can go ahead and say if paused, so this will check whether we are wanting to open our inventory, then this is where we start to draw it. So this is where I need my example up. So if we are paused, and then we're going to first off set the alpha, and this will make it look a little bit transparent, well actually quite a lot transparent, because it's going to be 0.4, and you can tell around these values your own, change them around and do whatever, but that seemed to look relatively good for me. Obviously it's personal preference, but that seemed to look relatively good. Now we're going to draw the actual outside rectangle. Now this is going to be a round rectangle because I like the rounded corners. Once again, this is all just preference, to be honest, and what we've done here is we've done 10 10 and then we've put viewport 0 minus 10. Now if I remember rightly, and I'll have to go check this quickly, but yeah, we don't have any views, so we can actually change this to make this a lot more easier and a lot quicker to do. So instead of using that, we're going to simply say room width minus 10. Okay, and that seems a bit easier, and when we go into the calculations later, that will also be a bit easier. However, if you do want to use your views, if you've put them in your game, then I will probably go into how you can use the views with this method in another video, or if there's not too much demand, I'll just personally send it out to you. Now we are going to set the alpha back to being 1, and this is where we're going to draw all the text and stuff like that, and all the boxes that hold the slots in the inventory. So what we're going to do is we're just going to copy this for the time being into there. Now what we're going to do here is actually make an outline, which means this has to be set to true, and this is going to outline one of our boxes. So 9, actually that's not going to do that, that's going to outline our main box here is what that's going to do, and 9. So it's basically just moving 1 outwards. Now this is where it starts to get a little bit tricky, because this is now alternating round in a for loop for each individual slot. So the for loop is going to be for var I equals 0, I is smaller than, and this can be any value we want really. I mean, this could potentially be 30, except how many slots we have, but I think 23 works for this system without it overflowing onto the end. Now that is basically it for the for loop. It's pretty basic for loop. And now what we're going to want to do is set our alpha back to be 0.4. So if we just go ahead and copy that down onto there, that's pretty straightforward. But now this is where stuff starts to get a little bit more tricky, because now we're going to use the inventory grid that we made here. earlier. So global.inv, then we're going to use a open square bracket, the accessor, which is a hashtag, 0, which is going to be our first slot, and I, obviously set by the for loop. If it does not equal 0, so if there is an item there, what we're going to do, we're going to draw a round rectangle, and this is where stuff gets pretty mathematical. Not too bad though, to be honest. And so first off, the x is just going to be a set value, because if you think about it, the x aren't going to change. All we're going to do is move down in like a list. So to do this, we're going to now use 20, which is going to be our constant, and then 15, which is going to be our gradient, maybe, if you would. And that's going to be times by I, like that. Now that's pretty straightforward, if I'm right. We're basically just using a simple formula, which is 15i plus 20. And this is pretty much the same all the way down. We just repeat it for the height, but backwards. So it's going to be room width there, minus 15. But then here we start to get a little bit more technical. So this is just going on the y, and this is going to be adding 15 plus 15 times I plus 17. Now that seems very, very precise, and I seem to remember I did loads of testing in that to find out what worked and what didn't, and that seemed to be the kind of values that worked. So you can go ahead and play around yourself with that, but for me those values worked. So you just copy that down, and basically that will just draw our inventory boxes. Pretty straightforward. Now once again stuff starts to get quite complicated, so we're going to set the alpha back to being 1, which we did here. And now just for looks sakes, I'm going to condense this if statement up into one line like that. It's the same thing, I've just deleted the curly brackets. Now in here we're going to once again do another if statement, and that's going to be the same as this one here, so we can just copy and paste that. And now we're going to want to draw text, once again slightly different, but it's going to be the same, just with a few different constants. So it's going to be 20 plus 15 times I, which is the same as before. And here, this is where I've started to get a bit technical and using some scripts and everything, but in real terms we can just use our sort of, oops, I've just screwed that. We can just use our inventory grid. So we can just say string global.inv, and this won't be incredibly user friendly, but it will work. Now what this will technically output is our it would output our sprite name, so spr underscore I don't know dirt block. Now that isn't incredibly user friendly, but what we can do is, what I've used here, is a script to convert that to a user friendly name. But anyway, let's finish this off. So copy this whole line here and we'll just make a few changes. Now what this is going to be is going to be the amount in that slot. Now this bit here is going to be in reverse actually, because we want to go kind of from the other side on this. We want to be put over to the right hand side. So it's going to be room width minus 40. That's going to be exactly the same. This is going to be exactly the same. Apart from that, is going to be changed to 1 now. And that's pretty much it. It's just a whole load of if statements and what have you, and drawing and everything. So I'll just full screen that for a couple of seconds. If you want to pause now, make sure you've got that all looking exactly the same, and then you can just move ahead and do the next bit. So the next bit is going to be in an else if statement, or an elif. Else if there is not, actually we don't even need that, as a matter of fact, not yet anyway. We will be doing that a little bit later. So if we go ahead and run this now, the dirt blocks won't actually move into our inventory when we mine them because we haven't coded that yet. But when we press I, we should see, or maybe we won't. I was going to say we should see our, I know why, we haven't put it in the room, have we? We should see our inventory arrive, so make sure to put that in there, the object inventory in the room planet 1. Ideally you probably wouldn't want it in the room because that's the planet room, but I mean it's up to you, well, regardless, whatever you want to do. So as you can see there, that is working to an extent. Obviously that's some sort of gap going on over here. Not quite sure what's going wrong there, but all the same, it is drawing and it is doing what it needs to do. And actually, before we leave, I'd just like to test it closing down because I didn't do that then. Because we need to see if there's an issue. No, you can see it toggles quite nicely, and it's quite a lightweight thing. It doesn't. You can still move around, and it's not affecting the performance whatsoever. Now, that is going to have to be it for this video. In the next video, we'll go in a bit more depth in this and start to do proper mining, proper placement of blocks and stuff. But for the meantime, that's going to be it. If you like the video, remember to like, subscribe, or just do what you guys want to do, and I will talk to you in the next one.